Hi everyone, happy Saturday and welcome back to Clues by Sam. We have a hard one today on the 1st of August and I'm really excited for this. I've seen different results already on the internet, so I'm mixed about my expectations. If you don't know what Clues by Sam is, it is a daily puzzle that grows in difficulty along the week, and we play this almost every day here on the channel. I will be explaining the logic as I solve, so if you need any help or you're stuck, then hopefully I can get you out of it. And the rules are there are 20 people, each of them is either a criminal or an innocent. They don't lie and they give you clues to help you figure out who is what. So let's see how this one goes today. Let's start with Gary telling us that exactly 2 of the 4 instance neighboring Will are in row 4. So Will has 5 people neighboring him, and 3 of those 5 are in row 4. 2 of the people in row 4 are gonna be innocents, and Will has to have 4 innocents total. So that means that the other 2 to make 4 have to be the people who are not in row 4 neighboring him. In this case, Vicky and Xavi both are gonna be innocents. And we still don't know who the single criminal here in row 4 is, the one that neighbors Will. Now, I should have phrased that differently because it could be that Uma is also a criminal in row 4. We don't know. So we shouldn't jump to the conclusion that there's only one criminal in row 4. Now, Vicky says that Kumar and Will have an equal number of innocent neighbors. And we just saw that Will has 4 innocent neighbors, so that means that Kumar has to have 4 as well and only one criminal because both of them have 5 neighbors each. But we don't know who the criminal is for any of them. But Xavier says that exactly 2 of the 7 instances neighboring Ivan are above Sophia. So Ivan has 8 neighbors total, 7 of which are innocent. So that's a lot of innocents, only one criminal, 2. And interesting thing here, it could be that Ivan shares a single criminal with Kumar, but we don't know yet. 2 of those innocents are above Sophia, and Ivan himself is above Sophia. There's another 2 people above Sophia, and those 2 also neighbor Ivan, so those 2 have to be innocents, in this case, Chris and Megan. And we keep Xavier's clue here to remind us of the total for Ivan. Now, Chris says that each row has at least 3 innocents. So, going back to row 4 here, we know now that indeed there are 3 innocents and only one criminal in row 4 because there's 4 people total in that row, and the single criminal is going to be neighboring Will, so that makes Uma an innocent for sure, but we still don't know who the criminal is. And we know that there has to be 3 innocents each row, so at least one more here in row 5. Now, Megan says that Chris has more innocent neighbors than Xavi. So, Chris, we know that Xavi could have 2 criminal neighbors. Like, let's say that Chris has... This is interesting because we know that Chris could have 5 innocents neighboring him. Like, this could happen. But Chris could have Ivan be a criminal, and then Ivan's single criminal neighbor could be, for example, Flora, and then Chris ends up with 2 criminals. But in this case, Xavier would have to have 3 criminals neighboring him, because Chris has to have more innocents. So Xavier would be able to have at most 2 innocents, and he has 5 neighbors total, so that would make 3. But it's impossible for Xavier to have 3 criminal neighbors because there's only 2 rows of people neighboring Xavier, and there could be at most 1 criminal in each of those rows neighboring Xavier. So the most criminal neighbors that Xavier can have is 2, first of all. What do I get from that conclusion? That the most criminal neighbors that Chris could have is 1. What else? How do I put anything together here? Kumar and Will have an equal number of innocent neighbors. Do we try to make Olive a criminal and see what happens? Because if we make Olive a criminal, then everybody else, the neighbors, Kumar, isn't innocent. And now Ivan's single criminal neighbor. I mean, I think the thing is we have to try to make Ivan a criminal. I don't really know. Let me think about this. Have I read Gary's clue? Exactly 2 of the 4 instances neighboring Will are in row 4. Oh yeah, we've been working with that. So that was like the first clue. Chris has more innocent neighbors than Xavi. We know that Xavi can have at most... First of all, let's go back. We know that Xavi couldn't have all 5 people that neighbor him be innocents, because if that happened, then there's no way Chris can have more than Xavi in terms of innocence, because both of them have the same number of total neighbors. So Xavi has to have at least 1 criminal neighbor, right? If Xavi has to have at least 1 criminal neighbor, could Zoe be a criminal? I mean, I don't think that's it. Hmm. I'm thinking. We have a lot of clues to put together here. Like only one of the people we have revealed doesn't have a clue that we should use. And she actually doesn't have a clue at all. So we have to put all of these together. First of all, 7 instance neighbor Ivan. If Ivan is a criminal, and we know that he has to have 1 criminal neighboring him, his criminal neighbor couldn't be Hall or John, because row 2 would have to have everybody else that is in it being innocent. And also, Chris couldn't have anybody else be a criminal neighbor, because it's the only way that he could have more instances than Xavier is having only 1 criminal neighbor. I had to do a little pause, but we are back. And I forget completely what I was doing. Oh yeah, I was checking that Ivan could be a criminal, because now his criminal neighbor had to either be Lucy or Noah. And in this case, it would have to be Noah, because it's the only possibility for Kumar to have a criminal neighbor, which he needs. So I guess we are looking at Lucy. Lucy couldn't ever be a criminal, right? So that's what I'm gonna try to prove, because I had a hunch that this is what we are gonna be looking at. So let's try to make Lucy a criminal. If we do that, then every other neighbor of Ivan's is gonna be an innocent, because Ivan only has 1 innocent neighbor, and that doesn't force Ivan to be an innocent. It doesn't force Ivan to be a criminal, because it doesn't really matter if Chris has 5 innocents as long as Xavier has 1 criminal. But what happens is that now Kumar couldn't have a criminal neighbor, because Olive would have to be the 1 criminal neighbor. And now row 3 doesn't have 3 innocents, so Lucy has to be an innocent. And we don't know that either Noah or Olive are a criminal. It could be that both of them are innocent, so we just leave that there. But Lucy says that John has exactly 7 innocent neighbors. Where's John? John is here, and he also has 7 innocent neighbors and 8 neighbors total, so only 1 criminal. Hmm. Interesting. Could John be a criminal now? Because if he is, and we know he has to have one criminal neighboring him, the criminal couldn't be Flora or Noah because they neighbor Ivan, who only has one criminal neighbor. They couldn't be, I mean, it couldn't be Chris because, oh, it couldn't be Ivan, sorry, because Chris has to only have one criminal neighbor at most in order to have more incense than Xavier. So everybody else that neighbors Ivan is as well an innocent. And Kumar would have to be an innocent as well, because there has to be 3 innocents in row 2. Now, Olive would be an innocent. So what are we looking at here when we make John a criminal? This would work for everybody, first of all. But do we see somebody that possibly would affect Chris, Ivan, and Kumar and John who couldn't be a criminal? Maybe Flora, or maybe now Ivan. I mean, Ivan would solve Chris, John if we put Ivan as a criminal now. Let's say that everybody else in neighbors John is an innocent. It doesn't work for Kumar because now we have to force John to be a criminal so that Kumar has a criminal. And now there's too many criminals in row 2. So Ivan has to be an innocent as well. He doesn't give us a new clue, but we can sort of apply the same thing to Hall, can we not? Because if we make Hall a criminal, then everybody else here in column C would be innocent. For Ivan. And now Kumar needs Olive to be a criminal, so it does work. I guess we couldn't ever make Kumar a criminal, maybe. Or can we? I think we can. I think that's not the issue right now. What about Noah? Or is it somebody else, like, for example, Adam? Like, somebody that doesn't help these two guys here. If we make Adam a criminal, then everybody else in neighbors Ivan again has to be innocent. And that would force Olive to be a criminal for Kumar, and that would solve John. So it does work with Adam being a criminal. So do I never make Kumar a criminal? I mean, it doesn't matter if Kumar is a criminal in this scenario, so it isn't exactly a proof point. If I make Flora a criminal, that helps everybody here. So who do I have to look at? John has 7. If I make him a criminal now, what happens? Because everybody else in neighbors Kumar has to be innocent, and everybody else in neighbors Ivan has to be innocent. But he has to have a criminal neighbor, which would have to be Kumar, and again, row 2 would have too many criminals. So John has to be an innocent too. What else? Who else do we look at? Because now if we make Kumar a criminal, does that affect anybody? It affects John, and that makes Kumar not have enough criminals, because making Kumar a criminal gives John his total number of criminals, which is 1, and that makes Kumar himself unable to have a criminal neighbor, which he needs. So Kumar has to be an innocent too. Okay, that's good. Kumar gives us a new clue. There's an equal number of innocents in rows 2 and 3. So if I make Hall an innocent, I have to make Noah and Olive both innocents, and I have to make Flora a criminal for Kumar, for John, and for Ivan. Can Adam ever be a criminal? Is my question. Because if Adam is a criminal, that makes Flora, Hall, and Noah innocent. And because Hall is now an innocent, and Hall is an innocent because of Ivan, who has Adam as his one criminal neighbor. And because now row 2 has all innocents, Olive would have to be an innocent too, and Kumar and John both end up with no criminals, which they need, so Adam has to be an innocent. Now, we can finally tag people as opposites, and can we? For Ivan? I don't think we can. Because we still have 3 people involved in each scenario. But we have a clue that I'm forgetting. Kumar and Will have an equal number of innocent neighbors. That's not the clue that I'm forgetting. Which one is it? I think I'm not. I mean, if I make Hall a criminal, then Olive could be a criminal, and that would help everybody. But if I make Hall an innocent, then Noah and Olive have to be innocents. And Ivan needs a criminal, which has to be Flora. It works for everybody too. So Noah can never be a criminal, because if Noah is a criminal, Hall has to be a criminal, and Ivan has too many criminals. Okay. And he doesn't give us a new clue. Right. But now I can tag Flora and Olive as opposites with the same color. And if they are opposites, we can check what happens if we make Flora a criminal, because she's also opposites with Hall. And that works. And if she is innocent, that works as well. It works for everybody because John has only one criminal, Kumar has only one criminal, Ivan has only one criminal, row 2 and row 3 have the same number of innocents, and Chris has only one criminal neighbor. But now that we know that Chris is for sure gonna have one criminal neighbor, because we know that for sure Flora and Hall are opposites, we know also for sure that Xavier has to have 2 criminal neighbors, which makes Will and Zoe opposites, and Sophia and Tina opposites, and Paula. And why are they opposites? Why am I sure that there's only one criminal here? Because we know that there has to be at least 3 innocents in each row. So we know that Paula has to be an innocent. And she gives us a new clue. John has more criminal neighbors than Vicky. So John has one criminal neighbor, and we know that Vicky couldn't have any. So that makes both Sophia and Will innocents. And they were both opposites with the others here. So both of these guys are criminals. Now, we get a new clue from Will telling us that there's an odd number of innocents on the edges. So that's hit. Because we have 14 people on the edges. And we have only one criminal so far. We could end up with one more if Flora is a criminal, and that will give us 2 criminals total on the edges, which would give us 12 innocents on the edges, and that's an even number. So we need 2 more criminals on the edges. We know then that Flora is an innocent, and that makes both Hall and Olive criminals. Okay. Good. How long did that take me? 20 minutes, that's fine. I knew we had a low perfect percentage, but I was afraid I was gonna take like an hour to solve this. So proud of me there, despite my pause and losing my train of thought there. Very nice. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know how it went for you. If you had any trouble getting it all together, because I feel like it was a lot to put together right there at the beginning, but it flowed smoothly after that. So very nice. I do really enjoy these puzzles. I'm gonna leave you guys here for now. I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.